Welcome. Today, we're going to dive into something that affects millions of people worldwide, Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, or PCOS. But here's what makes this presentation different. We're not going to focus on the symptoms you've probably heard about 1,000 times. Instead, we're going to explore PCOS through a completely new lens, one that looks at the root cause of what's really happening in your body. This reframing could change everything you thought you knew about this condition. Let me ask you something that might flip everything you thought you knew on its head. What if PCOS isn't really a disease of the ovaries at all? I mean, really think about that. This single idea is the key to reframing everything about PCOS for the next few minutes. We're going to ignore the symptoms that everyone talks about, the irregular cycles, the acne, the weight struggles, and focus exclusively on one thing, the root cause. Why? Because until we understand what's driving all those symptoms, we're just managing problems, not solving them. Now, let me give you an analogy that really captures this perfectly. Think of the symptoms of PCOS, the irregular cycles, the acne, as a flickering light bulb. You notice it flickering, right? It's annoying. It's obvious. It's what catches your attention. But is that flickering bulb really the problem? No. The real problem is the faulty wiring behind the wall. The bulb is just showing you that something's wrong. And this is exactly the framework we need to adopt for PCOS. Stop staring at the bulb and start looking behind the wall at the faulty wiring, the underlying metabolic stuff that's making the symptoms appear in the first place. With this idea in mind, let's deconstruct the PCOS diagnosis itself. When you look at the diagnostic criteria, you're seeing the signals, the things that are obvious and measurable. On the left side, you've got what's visible: irregular menstrual cycles, signs of high androgens like testosterone levels, the physical symptoms like acne and excess hair growth. But on the right side, you've got the hidden drivers, the things you don't see on a blood test or exam. These include insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, and stress. Here's the crucial takeaway. The problems on the left, the visible symptoms, are almost always just a direct result of the imbalances happening on the right. The signals are not the source, they're the effect. Think about it this way. Officially, a PCOS diagnosis happens when you meet at least 2 out of 3 specific criteria. But I want you to think of those criteria like warning lights on your car's dashboard. When that check engine light comes on, it's telling you there's a problem, right? But the light itself isn't the problem. You don't fix the car by taking a hammer to the warning lights. That would be absurd. Instead, you pop the hood to figure out why they turned on in the first place. That's exactly what we need to do with PCOS. The diagnostic criteria are warning lights, not the actual problem. And speaking of misconceptions, let's clear up one of the biggest right now. Those cysts in polycystic ovary syndrome, they aren't really cysts in the way most people think of them. A true cyst is a fluid-filled sac that can develop anywhere in the body. But in PCOS, what you're seeing are actually immature egg follicles that just got stuck. Hey, couldn't ovulate because the hormonal signals got scrambled. So again, they're a result of the faulty wiring we talked about, not the cause of it. The ovaries aren't the problem, they're just responding to signals that are out of balance. So now let's zoom in on the biggest piece of that faulty wiring. For the vast majority of people with PCOS, estimates suggest up to 80%. It all comes down to one incredibly powerful connection between 2 hormones, insulin and androgens. The most consistent driver we find is something called insulin resistance. Here's what that means. Your body's cells just stop listening to the hormone insulin. And when cells stop listening, your body has to shout louder to get its message across. Let me walk you through exactly how this chain reaction works, because understanding this flow is crucial. It starts with a meal high in sugar or refined carbohydrates. That makes your blood sugar spike. Your pancreas responds by unleashing a flood of insulin to deal with it. Way more insulin than normal. But here's where it gets interesting. That excess insulin doesn't just lower blood sugar. It also sends a direct signal to your ovaries, telling them to produce more androgens. And finally, those high androgens mess with the delicate hormonal signals needed for ovulation. See how it's all connected? The carbs you eat set off a hormonal cascade that ultimately disrupts your entire reproductive system. I love this analogy because it makes this concept so clear. Think of insulin as the volume knob on a radio. When you eat those high glycemic foods, you're cranking that volume knob all the way up. The signal from insulin becomes so loud that it's just static, and your ovaries can no longer hear the quiet, precise music of brain signals telling them to ovulate. All they hear is that loud static telling them to make more androgens. The beautiful, intricate communication between your brain and ovaries gets drowned out by the noise of excess insulin. But you know what? Insulin isn't acting alone in this story. We also have to look at its accomplices. especially the hidden role of stress. And this includes something we usually think of as purely good for us: exercise. Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, but with exercise and PCOS, it really is a case of the dose makes the poison. The right kind of movement can be one of the most powerful medicines out there, but the wrong kind, or just too much of it, can actually make the whole situation worse. Why? Because of cortisol, your main stress hormone. Here's how this backfires. Too many of those super high-intensity goal-out workouts can seriously jack up cortisol levels. And that's a huge problem because cortisol basically works against insulin, making your cells even more resistant. It also messes up the communication between your stress glands and your ovaries. Get this, you might be exercising to fix insulin resistance, but you could accidentally be making it even worse. This is why understanding the right approach is so critical. So, what's the sweet spot? What's the right balance? On one side, you have metabolically supportive movement. We're talking resistance training to build muscle that can soak up blood sugar, and some moderate aerobic activity for overall metabolic health. On the other side, you've got the metabolically stressful stuff. Those constant, draining, high-intensity sessions that just pour more stress into a system that's already overloaded. The difference is profound. One approach helps your body heal, while the other adds to the problem. This analogy really hits it home. A little bit of high intensity might be fine, like throwing a small log on a campfire. But doing it all the time is like throwing gasoline on that campfire. Sure, you get this huge, impressive flame for a moment, everyone notices it, but that explosion can actually damage the whole system, and it's definitely not sustainable. You can't keep throwing gasoline on a fire without eventually burning everything down. We want to build a steady, sustainable campfire, not create explosions that destroy the system. Okay, so we've identified the faulty wiring. We know what's going on behind the wall. Now for the most important part, the blueprint for actually fixing it. This is the path back to restoring balance, and it's built on 3 pillars. Pillar 1 is nutrition, Pillar 2 is movement, and Pillar 3 is stress and support. These 3 pillars work together to address the root causes we've been discussing. Each one supports the others, and together, they create a comprehensive approach to healing. Let's start with Pillar 1. Nutrition. The goal here is super simple. Turn down the volume on that insulin knob we talked about. This means focusing on meals that don't send your blood sugar on a roller coaster. We're talking plenty of protein and healthy fats to slow down digestion, tons of high-fiber vegetables that provide steady energy, and of course, cutting back on the refined foods that were causing the spikes in the first place. When you eat this way, you're not just managing symptoms, you're directly addressing the root cause of insulin resistance. Pillar 2 is movement. Here we want to prioritize resistance training because building more muscle gives that blood sugar somewhere to go. Muscle tissue is like a glucose sponge. It helps regulate blood sugar levels naturally. We'll add in some moderate aerobic activity for overall metabolic health and cardiovascular fitness. And the mantra here is all about balance and consistency, not crossing intensity. Remember, we're building a steady campfire, not creating explosions. Consistent, sustainable movement beats inconsistent high-intensity bursts every time. Pillar 3 is stress and support. And honestly, this is the glue that holds everything else together. It's non-negotiable. Making sleep a priority, because sleep is when your body heals and regulates hormones, using mind-body practices like meditation, deep breathing, or yoga. These things directly lower that stress hormone cortisol. And while targeted nutrients like inositol can be fantastic tools to help with insulin signaling, you have to remember the key principle. They are there to support the foundation of nutrition and movement, not to replace it. Supplements can help, but lifestyle comes first. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's that PCOS is not a life sentence. It's a biological signal. Your body's way of telling you that its metabolic systems are under a lot of stress. And this is actually good news, because it means your body is working correctly. It's alerting you that something needs attention. It's not broken, it's communicating. When you finally address that stress at the root, the body has this remarkable ability to find its way back to balance. This framework helps you understand that by addressing the root causes, insulin resistance, inflammation, stress, you're working with your body's natural healing mechanisms. You're not fighting against your body, you're helping it heal. When you stop ignoring the warning lights and start fixing the faulty wiring, when you reduce the stress on your metabolic systems, your body responds. It has an incredible capacity to heal itself when given the right conditions. The path back to balance isn't about treating symptoms, it's about addressing the source of the signal. And this leaves us with one final, powerful question to think about. By understanding this framework, you can start to ask yourself, what signal is my body sending me? And more importantly, what's the real source behind that signal? Because once you understand the root cause, you can do more than just manage PCOS. You can actually address it. Listen to your body's signals, look beyond the symptoms, and address the root cause. That's the path to lasting change. Thank you.